How wonderful is it to have a choir singing in person? It's so amazing. And for some folks who joined us online, it's like also maybe a little bit weird. So we can hold that as well. It's a different thing worshiping online than it is in person. So the question before us is how we keep our hearts wide open, and knowing that sometimes in order to do that, we have to put up some boundaries so that there are some parameters for our hearts and for our love. Now, there's a lot of things that I have learned in being a minister and in my own limitations. Holy cannoli, so many things I have learned about my own limitations. One of the most heartbreaking and difficult ones is that I have an infinite amount of love I can feel for the people I know and serve in the world, and I have only a finite amount of time and energy to act upon that love. Perhaps this is something you all have also learned in life. Yeah, I see some nods. So continue to do this work, I must protect my own heart and my own life. And as someone who has moved around a lot to be with many congregations, I will share that it is always, always heartbreaking to be with a congregation for a year or two, to get to know people, to be in people's lives, and then to say goodbye, and a month later, to meet new people and love them well too. This is why it makes so much sense to me that we have these professional boundaries in ministry, that we do not have contact with congregants for 6 months after we leave a congregation. It's because we need space too, in our own hearts and in our own lives, to say goodbye and establish new relationships. I've also found for me that it is far easier for me not to engage with congregants on social media, which is why you will not see me there. When I hop on Instagram, it's just as Kayla. I go on really only to see pictures of my nephews and to catch up with old friends. So when I used to be on social media as a minister and was alerted to pastoral needs, it was like, whoop, no longer just Kayla. I'm now Reverend Kayla, and now I'm working. So some of you, you can tell I'm communicating what my boundaries are to you right now. That's what's happening. Okay. So some of you might also be like, yeah, it's kind of weird. Why do you always go by Reverend Kayla whenever you're here? Now, as I was discerning all this earlier in my ministry, this whole what do I ask people to call me thing, a colleague articulated that they use the title Reverend because it helped them, themselves, and others to remember the nature of their relationship. I am in relationship to you as your minister, not just as me. And that relationship of a congregation to a minister is such a sacred relationship. Having someone in your community who is set back a bit, who's looking out for the whole, and having someone you can have a lopsided relationship with, where you get, when I ask you the question, how are you doing, the opportunity to answer that to a fairly great deal and not really have to worry about a full response from me. That is in how many other relationships do we get that? Not very many, I hope, for your life, not very many. That's maybe a thing to reflect on, Okay, and you can only do this. You can only trust that it's okay for me to ask you how you're doing and not really have to worry too much about how I'm doing, because you trust that I am attending to how I am doing in my life outside of church. Boundaries are the root of self-care. Boundaries are the root of self-care. They are what allow us to prioritize ourself and our health. And so they are what enables this powerful relationship a minister can have with the church to take place. It's what enables us to serve a community and be a bit back and attend to the whole as well as the parts. And it's what allows all of us as humans to keep on doing this work of living in a world that is so heartbreaking and so beautifully breathtaking. Right? Okay. Now, I'm also saying this because we all have been through some things together, perhaps more than most interim ministers and churches have been in 6 months, right? We've had a freaking global pandemic. There have been multiple deaths in the community, and there has been war. And I need to name for you that trauma has a way of bringing people closer together. It just does. And I have felt that with you, and it is a blessing. It is a blessing, and it must be acknowledged that this is happening. It's this thing we got going on, and part of why it's happening. Now, I say this now as a way for us to be aware and for to be conscious of the boundaries that we have within our lives and also the boundaries in this church. Now, I am still learning a whole lot about boundaries, and so really the only way I have to talk with you about it is just to share what I'm trying to figure out in myself and what I'm trying to do to help me so that it might help you all discern what you're needing. Now, you all might know where this is going. Boundaries, shocker, are not just important for the minister to have in the church, but for all of the members and friends and relationships too. Boundaries are essential in any family and in any community and in any church. So, back to Prentis's quote. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. Such a good quote, and I love it because even though boundaries, like Prentis says, do not always feel good to set or hold, they really are what enables us to keep on loving both ourselves and others. Now, this quote gets at the root of what boundaries are and their deep importance for all individuals, relationships, and communities. They are the space we need to love ourselves and to love others or a system. They are the space needed to love all with relationship. So I ask you just to take a moment to yourself and think of relationships you have with people, activities, or groups where you think you could actually maybe be more loving and open-hearted and generous if there were actually some more distance and more clear boundaries. I see maybe a little percolating, and you can take it home. We'll add that as another task and assignment. So as a community, y'all are never gonna come back. We're like getting too many assignments. They're growing assignments. They're optional. Take them when you want. Maybe they'll be ready for you later. Okay, so this is so important because as a church and as a community that believes in the transformative power of love, it's so important that this love does not become immature, anemic, or fluffy. Love is more powerful than that, and a power that requires both intention and restraint if we are to continue to allow it to move our lives for all of our lives. We know this from the heartbreak we feel around war, that it will break open our hearts, and we have to be intentional about discerning what it is ours to do, which fires are ours to put out and which fires are not. We hold boundaries because we love, because we know our own capacities and are being intentional about caring for ourselves and our relationships. We would not be able to prioritize the activities or the relationships that give us the most energy and where we have the most impact, that most sustain us for the long haul work that is life and loving. So, how do we create and set boundaries? Most relationship systems and therapeutic experts seem to agree on some 3 simple steps. So 1, be aware of when and why you need them, just like with the hula hoop. Be aware of what boundary you might be needing. 2, just clearly state them. 3, hold the boundary and don't let it be crossed. Remember and stay grounded in the fact that our no's make space for our yeses. And the no's we say that don't align with what we're needing make space for the yeses that do. And remember and ground yourself in the reality and the truth that you are doing this because you are grounded in love for yourself and for others. We are of most value to others when we are capable and healthy and grounded. Now, we know this is important in churches because when we have healthy boundaries and know what is ours to do and share our gifts, we are creating a culture where that is normal and where we will attract people with other values. And this is what we want. This is what we want. Now, I know you all probably know most of these things. And sometimes it's just helpful for us to name and remind, because it is so easy for us to just let our love kind of pull us into doing perhaps a little more and forgetting about ourselves. So, my hope for all of you is that you can center in this love of both yourself, others, and the world. Amen. May it be so, and may we make it so.